أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي علا بحول ودنا بتوله مانح كل غنيمة وفضل وكاشف كل هزيمة وأزلين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل رسوله المختار الأبرار والأدحار، سيما على الحسين المظلوم المقتول المذبوح من القفاء في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء، الذي غسله دمعه وكفنه رمال كربلاء. يا ليتنا يا كنا معك فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد كان لكم فيهم أسوة حسنة. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Some of you may be wondering that for 2 days we've had a slightly different khutbah. Those lines that we mentioned, مذبوح من الخفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ, these are lines said by Sayyida Zainab سلام الله عليها. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. And inshallah, just in case you're wondering, we will be mentioning these lines in some masa'ib in the next coming days, and they are heart-shaking lines of masa'ib that she says about her brother. And when you hear them, inshallah, I'm sure all of you will cry. Your hearts will feel the sorrow that she felt. But just in case if anyone was wondering what these new lines we are using in the khutbah, they are the lines of Sayyida Zainab. One of the most important topics that we understand we need to speak about is the topic of looking at the lives of our Imam alayhim wasalam, because we understand that we have been titled as the 12ers. By the 12ers, external people mean we are those individuals that follow the 12 Imams. And as I mentioned yesterday or the day before, the wilayah of the first Imam means the wilayah of the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, etc. till the 12th. And we understand that as we are known as 12ers, as we are known as Ithna Ashari, it would be very weird and very peculiar and foolish if we didn't know about the lives of our Imams. It would be very peculiar if we didn't implement their morals and their ethics into our own lives. And unfortunately, many of us don't have enough knowledge about our Imams. Some people ask me often about certain books. When I go to certain places, I remember that 2 or 3 times people asked, can you give me books to recommend that I should read? I'm a new Muslim. I've recently converted from Sunni to Shia. I've recently converted from non-Muslim to Muslim. Or I just want to know more about Islam. And so usually I give them lists of books which I think are the best. They normally ask, but will I have to pay for these books? And I mentioned a few nights ago that it is very foolish that those individuals that want knowledge but don't want to pay for books. Because we find that books allow us to indulge into various Islamic sciences. So I tell them, look, these are the books. A lot of people ask, what books are there available in English about the lives of our Imam alayhi Muslim? Very good question. And very quickly, just for your knowledge, I'll tell you, yes, there is Kitab al-Irshad of Sheikh Mufid. Yes, there is Sheikh Abdul Wahib Kashi's slightly smaller book. But there is also a set of books that not many people know about by Baqir Sharif Qarashi. Ayatollah Baqir Sharif Qarashi, rahmatullah alayhi, passed away recently. These books are in English. These books are very thick. And they are in volumes of each of our Imams. And you'll find that even if you pick up one of those books and you read, for example, the life of our first or second or third, it contains their whole life, about their mother, about their father, about their companions, about their whole life. It's such a comprehensive book, each volume, that if we just read one, it will change our whole viewpoint on our Imams. So just in case someone was wondering, because I know many people can only read English, if you want to have comprehensive studies into the lives of the Imams, Sheikh Sharif Qarashi's books are there, and they are also found on the internet if you don't want to pay for them. Today we want to speak about, inshallah, our great Imam, Imam al-Sajjad, salamullah alayhi, and his life. And there are many different titles of the Imam as we know. Zainul Abidin, Sayyidul Sajidin, As-Sajjad. However, there is one title I want to start our lecture with today which is not as well known. And that is Adamu Ali Muhammad. That he is the Nabi Adam of the Aale Muhammad. This is a beautiful title of the Imam. If we were to understand this, we would understand or have true ma'rifah and cognizance of who our Imam is. The narrations say he is known as Adam of Aale Muhammad. Why? Number one, Nabi Adam. It is because of Nabi Adam that every single one of us is existing today. It is because of Nabi Adam that me and you are sitting here. It is because of Nabi Adam that we have survived and humankind is where it is today. In the same way, Adam of Aale Muhammad, it is because of Imam al-Sajjad that Aale Muhammad have survived till today. Number one. Number two, Adam. The name Adam comes from the word, or there's different derivatives. One is Adim. Adim means nature. In other words, if I want to understand the nature of human beings, for example, we are forgetful. For example, we make mistakes. Of course, he did not sin. For example, we do istighfar. If we want to know the nature of man, we look at Nabi Adam from Adim. In the same way, Adam of Aale Muhammad. If you want to know the nature of Aale Muhammad, of each of the Imams, what are their characteristics, what is found within their life, look at Imam Sajjad. This is a beautiful title of the Imam, Adam of Aale Muhammad. And we find that the Imam, some individuals say 38 AH. He was born, as we know, Karbala took place on the 61st year after Hijrah. Some say 38 AH, some say 37. There's different narrations. So some say he was 22 years old in Karbala. Others say 24. There's differing narrations. We find, as we are aware, his mother, the wife of Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi, was originally known as Shah-e-Zanan, and she came from Persia. She was the daughter of Yazdigard. Yazdigard was the last Persian prince, because after Yazdigard, Islam took over the area of Persia and turned it Muslim, as we know today. It was the time of the Khilafah of Umar al-Khattab, the second Khalif. And as we are aware, Umar al-Khattab, he sent many different expeditions across the world, across the Arab world, across the Persia, Africa, etc., to turn these places into Muslim. And of course, these expeditions, they weren't Islamic because they didn't have Islamic morals. They weren't supported by Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, from 11 AH to 36 AH, he stayed at home. He did not support any of the Khilafahs of the first, the second, or the third. He stayed at home because he knew they are tyrant. They are tyrant expeditions. They are not Islamic. Umar al-Khattab, he stayed in Medina. He sent an expedition to where? He sent an expedition to Persia. They came back with two princesses who were the daughters of Yazdigard. One is said to be known as Shah-e-Zanan. Some say the other was known as Shahrbanu. But as we know, Shah-e-Zanan translates from Farsi into English as Sayyidatun Nisa. And so Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I'm changing your name because Sayyidatun Nisa is only one. My great wife, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha, which is why they changed her name to Shahr Banu. Now, these two are bought. It is said that they are brought towards Umar, who's sitting. This is within history. He's sitting there, they are brought towards him. And Umar was looking at Shahr Banu in a wrong way. So she says in Persian, have shame. Have shame, O individual. Now, Umar al-Khattab, he doesn't know Persian. So he thought that she had sworn at him, abused him. So he took out his sword. He was famous for taking out his sword. He took out his sword. He was about to kill her when Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and says, wait. You don't know Persian, but Amir al-Mu'mineen knows every single language on the earth today. So he says, no, in Persian, he said, have shame because you are looking at her. He says, okay, sorry. Then he says, now what I want to do is I want to make them captive, or I want to make them servants. Because at the time when elderly people would go to Hajj, they would use animals to sit on, to take their things, to take their luggage, etc. He says, I want to make these princesses and these women and these other individuals as those animals for Hajj, so that they can help old people, they can hold the luggage, etc. I want to abuse them. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, wait, have you not heard of the hadith of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Where he says, if you take captive, and they were good people, they were very of a lofty status. Now they are captives, they are of a low status. However, they were good people. They did not have restraint. They respected you. They had human values. They had morals. Don't attack them, don't abuse them. You either set them free or you keep them in a good manner. Umar, on hearing this, says, Ali, you're right. I should set them free. Oh Ali, by saying this hadith, you've changed my whole viewpoint on non-Arabs. Because of course, Arabs till today hate. They don't feel comfortable with non-Arabs. Umar says, because of this hadith of yours, I've changed my viewpoint on non-Arabs. He says, I'm going to set these two princesses free. So they were set free. Now, people were asking them, are you open to marriage? Because they are princesses, they are Persian princesses, they have religiosity in their life, they're religious, they have good values. Are you open to marriage? So what it is said that Shaykh Arbani salamullahi alayha was sitting and she was covered in some sort of covering, a curtain, whatever. And Amir al-Mu'mineen asks, are you open to marriage? Do you want to get married? She says nothing. He asks again the second time. She says nothing. The third time again he asks. When she's silent for the third time, he realizes that she means that yes, I'm open to marriage. I'm happy. Amir al-Mu'mineen says she's open to marriage. However, no one will force her to get married. Whoever she chooses, she chooses. So she is there and she points at Imam Hussein and says, I want to get married to him. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, congratulations, O my son Hussein, we are going to get you married to Shaykh Arbani with this princess. And then in fact, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to her that I want to give you the glad tidings that you will give birth to a hujjat of Allah, a proof of Allah, Imam al-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And here we understand the first lesson we can take from the life of this Imam, our holy Imam, is the importance of understanding that when we want to get married, and I know most are more experienced in this area than me, however, when we want to get married, we are very cautious, or we should be very cautious when looking for our spouse. Certain ulama asks that if you want to have good children, children who have religiosity, children who are youthful, but they are mu'mineen, they are part of the army of the Imam, when do you start thinking about this? Do you start thinking about it after you get married, that you'll do this dua when the wife is pregnant, or that dua? One scholar replied, no, I would have started thinking about it at my own youth. In other words, I would ensure that my own youth was religious, so that I could get married to someone religious, so that my children could be religious. You find a beautiful story. And in fact, it's a miracle that we've got to night 7 and I haven't mentioned Ayatollah Muqaddas Ardabili, because I mention Ayatollah Muqaddas Ardabili everywhere. Often there are so many stories of his life, and his life is very eventful. Ayatollah Muqaddas Ardabili, about the way in which his parents met and how he was born, it is mentioned that his father was in Ardabil. He was farming. His father was farming in Ardabil, and of course, the sun was out, sweat was oozing down from his forehead and his face. He was very thirsty. He saw that there was a river, a stream flowing. So he thought, let me have a drink, I'm thirsty. He was farming, he had the drink. He saw an apple was also flowing. He said, what's better than a juicy apple at this time? He takes the apple, crunch. He eats about half of it. Then he thinks, wait a minute. This apple might not be mine. Maybe someone dropped it by accident in the river. I've taken it, I've done ghasbi. I'm a ghasib. Maybe it is from an orchard. I need to ask and repent. Now we don't care. We took 10 apples. If we forget about one, we take as many as we want. We don't think about taking other people's property. He, the father of Ayatollah Muqaddas, was so cautious. He said, look, I've taken this apple. I may have taken someone else's right. So he investigates. He goes back. He's in Ardabil. He sees that there was an orchard next to the river. Many apples were there. He realizes that I have done something wrong, incorrect. So he sees that next to the orchard is a house. He knocks on the door. Salamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam, agha. Yes, he says, I think I've taken one of your apples by accident. Will you forgive me? This guy is thinking he's a joker. People steal in front of you and they don't say anything. They don't even look at you. This guy's taken an apple and he's asking for forgiveness. So in his mind, he's thinking, let me play with him. Let's have a little joke. So this man says, okay, I've forgiven you, but that orchard is half mine, half is of my brother. And my brother lives in Najaf al-Ashraf. I've forgiven you. If you want complete forgiveness, go to Najaf. This guy's saying, okay, the father of Ayatollah Maqdis says, I will go, because I don't want this to come back to me on the day of Qiyamah. He goes all the way from Ardabil to Najaf Ashraf. Do you know this person? Do you know this person? He has an orchard in Ardabil. He finds that person. He knocks on the door. They say, Salaam alaikum, alaikum salam, whatever. Yes, he says, can you forgive me? I've done something wrong. He said, what have you done? He said, you have an orchard. Half of it is yours, half of it is your brother in Ardabil. I took an apple and I ate it by mistake. Will you forgive me? Now this guy also is thinking, one apple, he came all the way from there to Najaf al-Ashraf. This guy's crazy. He's not human. Will you forgive me? He says, I'll forgive you on one condition. He says, go on. That condition is that you marry my daughter. Now the father Ayatollah Maqdis says, that condition is that you marry my daughter. He realizes that there must be something wrong with the daughter. Because of course no one will just give their daughter away. He says, but there's a few things wrong with her. He says, I expected that. He says, there's 4 things wrong with my daughter. Number 1, she is blind. Number 2, she is deaf. Number 3, she is dumb. Number 4, she is crippled. She can't walk. Ya Allah, 1 apple. And this? 1 apple. He's thinking, I don't want that apple to come back to me on the day of Qiyamah. And says, I'll do it. I don't mind. On the day of Qiyamah, I know that 1 apple will cause so much distress to me and despair to me. It will be detrimental to my success and falah on the day of Qiyamah. I'll do it. I'll do the wedding. He says, okay. Now, of course, in that time, you wouldn't really see the bride before the wedding. The wedding happens. He goes into the room on the first night. He sees there's a woman. She looks perfectly fine. She's beautiful. She's slim. She's able to talk. She's seeing. Very healthy. He says, have I come in the wrong room? Have I come in your sister's room? Am I meant to be in the other room next door? She says, no. I'm the person you married. He replies, but your father told me you were blind, you are deaf, you are dumb, you are crippled. You're perfectly fine. He said right, you misunderstood. By saying that I was blind, he meant that never did I look at the face of a na-mihram. By saying that I was deaf, never did I listen to something haram such as ghiba. By saying that I was dumb and unable to speak, never did I slander anyone or do ghiba. By saying that I was a cripple, never did I walk towards haram. They get married because of both of their etiquette. Look, one individual travels all that way for 1 apple. The wife, how great is she? Never has she sinned in her life. When they get married, who is born? Ayatollah Muqaddas Artabili. In other words, if you want to have a child who is like Ayatollah Muqaddas, if you want to have children who are prosperous in this life, who are intelligent, you find individuals who are so intelligent, they come out of the womb knowing Quran. Why? Because the parents ensure that they marry someone who is religious and they are cautious. For example, when we mentioned Sheikh Abbas Qummi, it is mentioned when his mother would feed him, she was in wudu. It is these practices that ensure that your child is a child of a religious nature, your child is successful. And this is what happened in the story of Imam Sajjad, that Amir al-Mu'mineen ensured that whoever Imam Hussein marries, she is a pious lady. As we are aware, Hazrat Shaykh Harbanu salamullahi alayha, she passes away just after giving birth to the Imam. So as soon as she gives birth to the Imam, she passes away. So who is going to take care of the Imam? As we know very famously, there is a slave girl in their house who is said to have taken care of the Imam and been his foster mother. It is mentioned about her that the Imam would say, Imam Sajjad, I would never eat with her. When we would sit to eat, I would not eat with her. People said, why? Because I did not want that my hand would go forward for a morsel of food, and she also wanted that, so her hand would come back. I didn't want to disrespect her by this, by me wanting to take this dish, and her also wanting to take the dish, and then her retracting her hand. Which is why never did I eat with my mother. Not with my stepmother, not with this woman, with my mother. The second important point we take from the story of Imam Sajjad is the importance of your mother, the importance of those women who take care of you. Not just that, the importance of women in general. Because we haven't understood that the religion today is successful. The fact that me and you are sitting here, the fact that we have been praying, reading Quran, Sawm, Salah, Hajj, Zakah, Umrah, Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi al Munkar, Jihad, Khums, Zakat, everything is because of a woman. Because of Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, we are here today. Every single thing we have is because of a woman. In fact, as we know, Saddam Hussein, the accursed, and I don't think we should say Hussein with his name, Saddam only, because he's trying to dishonor Imam Hussein by having his surname Hussein. Saddam, the accursed tyrant. Don't be scared to call Saddam a tyrant, the whole world knows it. Saddam. As we know, Ayatollah Sayyid Baqir al-Sadr Shaheed, he had kept him captive as well as his sister, Sayyida Bintul Huda Rahmatullahi Alayha. As we know, he was going to kill, and he did kill, he made him Shaheed. He's also, Ayatollah Baqir al-Sadr Rahmatullahi Alayhi is also known as Shaheed Khamis, the fifth Shaheed. Remember we said Shaheed al-Awwal, Shaheed al-Thani, Shaheed al-Khamis is Sayyid Sadr. So Saddam says, I'm going to kill him as well as his sister. People said, why are you killing his sister? Just put her in the jail, throw her into the jail. The reply Saddam gives, the accursed Saddam, he says, I do not want to make the same mistake that Yazid made. That Yazid killed Imam Hussein, but he misunderstood the greatness of the woman. He thought Sayyidah Zainab is weak. I can throw her into the jail, nothing will happen. Because she was in the jail, she caused a revolution. She was able to break out of the jail. She changed the whole world forever, and she caused destruction of Yazid. Saddam says, I don't want to make the same mistake that Yazid made. I understand that women are very powerful. And so that's why he also made Shaheed Sayyidah Bintul Huda Rahmatullahi Alayha. The power of a woman, the power of a mother, the importance of a mother, not just that, the importance of parents. I've been given many requests to talk about this and that. I've forgotten many of them. I've remembered some of them. And of course, we can't just randomly bring up the topics that have been requested to speak about because it won't be in the flow. I will speak about some of the requests in the next few nights. One of the requests was to speak about the importance of parents. Again, Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates this. I think we've mentioned Sheikh Abbas Qummi 6-7 times now. I don't know why, maybe because he's such a great personality, rahmatullah alayh. He mentions this about Mirza Hussein Noori. Mirza Hussein Noori's story is very interesting, but before that, recite a loud salawat. Mirza Hussein Noori is also known as Muhaddith Noori. And he studied in Najaf, one of the great scholars of Najaf. We still have many of his books, many of his narrations we find today. His life is very interesting as well. Mirza Noori lived in Najaf. He studied for around 18 years in Najaf. He had a friend with him who was 26 years old. Both of them decided that they were going to travel from Najaf to Yemen. They had some sort of business in Yemen to deal with. They said that we're going to travel from Najaf to Yemen. Of course, then they didn't have first-class airlines, online entertainment, etc. They had to travel by boat, and the boat was a shoddy boat. So they sat in the boat from Najaf to Yemen. This 26-year-old friend, he had got married 2 years ago, when he was 24, and there's a reason why I said that. So they were traveling. As they were traveling, unfortunately, there was a very bad storm. And rain and heavy winds caused part of the boat to be punctured. Once that happened, the boat eventually broke into pieces of wood, and many people drowned. A great disaster occurred. Many people drowned, and the friend of Muhaddith Noori, Mirza Noori, also drowned and passed away. Muhaddith Noori was lucky, because he was able to catch on to one of the planks of wood. And as he caught onto one of the planks of wood, he was floating, and eventually he floated towards a small island. The other friend, he tried to help him, he tried to protect him, but he drowned. The boat is in ruins. Many of the other individuals have also drowned and passed away. Mirza Noori was lucky. He got to this island. He thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he thought, let me go and explore. I need to get out from here. I need to get to Yemen or Najaf. I need to get back home. I need to get to safe land. So he explores. He sees that this island is small. There is a well. He was very thirsty at the time. The well signified that there was, of course, civilization there. He was very thirsty at the time. So what does he do? There's a bucket in the well. He brings the bucket down. He fills the bucket with water. He pulls it out again. As he's about to drink, he's thirsty. He's in a state of trauma and shock. Such a bad event has happened with him in his life. His friends have died. Many people have died. He's stranded. He's in a sense of chaos and panic. He's about to drink this water when suddenly he hears a voice. I am also thirsty. I am also thirsty. He looks around. Who said that? He's looking around, right to left, east to west, north, south. No one is there. He scans his whole vision. No one can be seen. Again, he comes to drink. I am also thirsty. He looks around. No one. The third time this comes, I am also thirsty. He hears that the voice is coming from up there. So he looks. He sees that there is a man. Who is that man? His same friend. This guy, he's in a chain which goes all the way up to the skies. In other words, he's in barzakh. And Muhaddith Nuri can see his state in barzakh. He is hanging from the skies. His tongue is very long and stretched, and it is dry, and it is out of his mouth. He says, I am also thirsty, give me some water. Muhaddith Nuri is shocked. My friend, he is a talib ilm. He's studying in the Hawza of Najaf. He's not a normal person. He should be religious. He should be someone who has a great status in the akhirah. He's in this state. He's very scared. He tries to give him water. As he tries to bring the jug to give him water, suddenly the rope is pulled, so he goes further up. He tries again to give him water, the rope is pulled again. The third time again, the rope is pulled. After that, they say Muhaddith Nuri, Mirza Nuri is so shocked at the state of his friend, he faints. He's so shocked. My friend, he's just died. I've seen him here. Look at his state. He faints. When he wakes up, he sees a caravan is surrounding him. He tells them what's happened. They take him to Yemen. He does his business in Yemen. He comes quickly back to Najaf, to his hometown. He goes straight to the Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi and says, Ya Imam, please tell me, what had my friend done? He was only 26 years old. He was a student in Najaf. He was a Hawza student, a seminary student. He should be a religious person. He should have a great maqam. What has he done? So after about 3 months, he sees a dream. In his dream, he sees his friend is there. His friend says, there were 3 things I did. This is the main message of tonight's lecture. 3 things that he did. Do we adhere to these things? Number 1. He says, when I was in Najaf, I had my family in Basra. My parents, mother and father. They were old. They would constantly ask me to come and visit them. I was stuck with friends, with studies. In other words, even if your studies shouldn't be more important than your parents. He says, I was stuck with studies and friends. I was in Najaf. I was comfortable. They would call out to me, why don't you come to see us? They were old. I would not send any money to them. Because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent this adhab down onto me. Where are we coming from? Imam al-Sajjad. Even though that woman wasn't his biological mother, he gave her so much respect. Imagine. This is the second thing, just to complete the story. The second thing is, there was a house that my father left in Najaf. This house, half of it was given to me, half of it was given to my sister. However, my sister was very wealthy. She was rich. She was well off. So, she was in her own house. I took that house. I didn't even tell her that half of it was meant to be hers. And she didn't ask. I thought, she's rich, she doesn't need the house. So I was staying there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, because of me usurping half of her right by taking half of this house, none of my salah is accepted. Mirza Nuri says, what do you mean? You used to recite salah with me every day. He says, yes, but I did wudu in that house. So because I did wudu in that house, my wudu is not qabul and accepted. How can my salah be accepted? So the third thing that I did, the third message we take from this story, is that, as I told you, he was married at 24. For 2 years that I was married, I abused my wife. I shouted at her. I was angry at her. I looked down at her. I didn't understand that she was someone who blessed my household. I told her, go back to your family. I don't want you. Because I did not have good relations with my wife, this is what happened. Understand this, we also have these 3 things we need to ensure. Our parents, in the way that Imam Sajjad understood. My mother has passed away, fine. However, this foster mother of mine, I will give her the utmost respect. Number 2, I adhere to the rights of others, even though that woman was rich. Even though she was rich. Allah still said, why did you not tell her about her right? The third, ensure that you, with your wife, etc., even with your family, have good relations. Imam Sajjad, salamullah alayhi, therefore we understand the importance of the mother. The importance of the father, the importance of parents. Imam al-Sajjad, as we know, before Karbala, where was he? He was in Medina. After Karbala, when they came back, they were in Medina. It is said that because Islam was in such a dangerous situation, Islam required that the Imam was always in one place, so that people could always revert back to him. Because if the Imam was in one place one day, and in Kufa the other, Najaf the other, people would be confused. How do we contact him? We're in such a state of disarray. So the Imam stayed here. Sayyida Zainab, however, salamullahi alayha, it is said that we speak as we go from one center to the other, one place to the other, we recite. Whose sunnah is this? Sayyidah Zainab. That Imam Sajjad realized I need to stay in one place, she would travel from all over the place. Here's also one important point I want to mention. That many people think the male khutaba and orators are the more powerful ones or the more listened to. However, the first orator was who? A female. The first khatib, majlis, reciter of Imam Hussein was Sayyidah Zainab, who was a woman. It is because of, if you look, even today I'm surprised that when they have their majlises, men, when we have our majlises, 1 hour, 2 hour max, we can't sit for too long. We want to go home, stick on the TV. They, however, mashallah, I'm surprised, they will do 5 hours, 6 hours, yet still they want more. They'll do Ziyarah Ashura, they'll do so much Masa'ib, they'll recite so many Latmiya, Noha, Marthiya, etc. Yet still they're not tired. The women kept the message of Imam Hussein alive. Sayyidah Zainab therefore would travel to other places. Imam Sajjad was in Medina. In Medina you find it was a very weird and peculiar environment because as I mentioned, I think in lecture number 2, Bani Umayyah have always tried to attack who? Ahlul Bayt. Muawiyah, if I tell you what Muawiyah would say, Muawiyah had a line, Nahnu shajaratu Rasulillah. Astaghfirullah. Muawiyah, who hates the Prophet, who hates his lineage, he would say, I am from the lineage of the Prophet. Can you believe it? Even Banu Abbas, if we had time we'd mention, Banu Abbas said, we are from the lineage of the Prophet. How? Because you share one dodgy ancestor down the line, because you share an ancestor? The Ahlul Bayt, what do you mean? They're closer to the Prophet than you. Muawiyah and his tactics. One day when we mentioned about the 4 books of hadith, I was going to mention Abu Hurairah. I'll mention Abu Hurairah here. Abu Hurairah, he was part of Ashab al-Suffah. He was a very poor individual. When Abu Hurairah came to the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he came in 7 AH. The Prophet died in 11 AH at the beginning. So Abu Hurairah, he was with the Prophet for about 3 years. Amirul Mu'mineen, who was with the Prophet for every single stage in his life, has narrated about 580 narrations from the Prophet. 580. Abu Hurairah, who has been with the Prophet for about 3 years, you know how many he's narrated? 5,000. In 3 years, 5,000. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's been with the Prophet every single day of his life. He's narrated only 580. How is Abu Hurairah narrated 5,000 odd? Can you imagine? Abu Hurairah, when he first met the Prophet, he was so poor, it is said that when he was on the floor sleeping, people would walk over him. Because this guy, he's poor, he's got no clothes, he's come from Yemen. Abu Hurairah, it is said the only reason why Abu Hurairah befriended the Prophet is because he knew that if I befriend the Prophet, I will get free food. Because people will come to me and give me, and I said in a sentence somewhere, and I'll say it here, let's make sure we don't come to the majlis for food as well. Some people do. That they come to the majlis of Imam Hussein, they go to people's houses just to fill their stomach. Abu Hurairah's sunnah is this. We need to come to the majlis to actually learn, to do ibadah, to give condolences to Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, which is what you are doing, mashallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. And Abu Hurairah, why is it? I'm talking about the time in Medina during the time of our 4th Imam. Abu Hurairah, I'm going to quote you a hadith about him fabricating hadith. Abu Hurairah, he was basically the pet of Muawiyah. Muawiyah had a small little dog called Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah would follow Muawiyah around. Whatever Muawiyah would say, he would accept. Abu Hurairah follows Muawiyah once into Masjid al-Kufa. And he wants to impress Muawiyah. He wants to get money from Muawiyah, cash. So he says, he calls out to everyone. He says, I promise I have heard the Prophet say that whoever makes my city unclean, may Allah's la'na be on that person. And I, Abu Hurairah, promise that Ali has made the Prophet's city unclean. In other words, everyone should do la'na on our holy Imam. Because of this, la'na was done on the Imam, and Muawiyah was so happy, Muawiyah gave him the governorship of Medina. So Medina has always been filled. Till today you'll find Medina is anyway, we know what Medina is. Medina has always been filled with this propagation against Amir al-Mu'mineen. Muawiyah's house today is in Medina. Muawiyah's house today you'll find in Medina. Those of you who have been to Umrah and Hajj, his house is there. If you ask them, where is the street of Bani Hashim? We destroyed it. Abu Hurairah caused, in fact, during the time of Imam Sajjad, that someone was leading the prayer, the Imam of Jum'ah. during the time, it was normally the norm to do la'na to our Imam before and after the prayer. Once someone forgot, because he forgot, they said, look, 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 look. He's messed up the prayer. They beat that individual. They hit him. They wounded him. They assaulted him because he forgot to do la'na on Amir al-Mu'mineen. I wonder, when Walid is drunk and he leads the prayer of Fajr and he does 4 rakat, no one says anything? And when this happens, they beat him. This was the environment in the time of Medina where the Imam was. So the Imam had to deal with many individuals who had hatred for the Ahlul Bayt, Amir al-Mu'mineen and his family. The story of Malik ibn Marwan is very interesting. Many people mention it in brief. I want to mention it in detail. Because as we know, Malik ibn Marwan, Marwan ibn Hakam. Marwan ibn Hakam. Who is this Marwan ibn Hakam? Marwan ibn Hakam was that individual that pelted stones at Imam Hussein. Marwan ibn Hakam is that individual who destroyed the house of Imam Sajjad. This is Marwan ibn Hakam. Marwan ibn Hakam was also during one time the governor of Medina. And as we know, after Karbala, people realized that this Bani Umayyah, they are on the wrong path. People realized, their eyes opened, that Bani Umayyah are on the wrong path. So people slowly and slowly started pointing their finger at Bani Umayyah. Then came Bani Abbas, who were as worse. Inshallah, you'll read about Bani Abbas someday. You'll find how they were as worse as Bani Umayyah. So, people started pointing fingers at Bani Umayyah. One of the fingers was pointed at Marwan. And they said that this individual, he is too harsh, and he destroyed the house of Imam Sajjad. He's causing a lot of injustice. So what did they do? This individual, he was sent to Sham. Marwan is sent to Sham. The person in Sham who was the Khalifa of the time says, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sack you from your post as governor of Medina. And I'm going to say that because you are a bad individual, you are separated from us. And so people will say, Bani Umayyah are now good. Marwan was the bad part of Bani Umayyah. I'll make you stay in Medina. You'll do nothing for 1 whole year. After that, I'll take you back in when people are happy. So Marwan ibn Hakam is saying, I'm fine, okay. So he said, go to Medina. He sent to Medina. In Medina, every single person knew the status of this Marwan. They knew what type of individual he was. Because he had ruled in this Medina. So when he entered, he had his family, his children with him. He had said to some people, do you have a house to rent in Medina? They said, yes, but we won't give you it. Because we know who you are. So the first night in Medina, he sleeps on the road without any food, water, etc. with his children, with his wife. The next day he says, does anyone have a house to give me? I'll buy the house in Medina. They said, we have houses, we don't want to give it to you. The second night also, he spends on the road with his family. Third night goes. On the fourth night, he's very angry. He takes out his sword. He says, I'm telling you, give me somewhere to rent, give me a house, give me somewhere to stay. They said, what are you doing? Marwan, this sword doesn't work anymore here. You used to be the leader, now you are a beggar. Act like a beggar. Someone filled his ear, said, go to Imam al-Sajjad. Who is this individual? This is that individual who, number 1, has destroyed the house of the Imam. Number 2, this individual pelted thrones at his father. Number 3, this is the individual who shot arrows at Imam Hussein. He says, go to Imam Sajjad. He says, what do you mean? I am the one that abused him and his family. What is he going to do? He said, no, you have not understood the maqam and the status of the sons of Fatima al-Zahra. That the sons of Fatima al-Zahra, even though you're their enemies, they'll still respect you. So he goes with his head down, and he knocks on the door. There's a ghulam, the servant. He says, yes, who are you? He says, I'm Marwan. Which Marwan? Marwan ibn Hakam. He says, okay, what do you want? I want to see the Imam. This servant tells the Imam that, look, Marwan is there. It is said within the narration, the Imam runs out of the house without his shoes. When asked, Ya Imam, why did you do that? He said, whenever someone comes to meet me, I run out of the house as quickly as I can, even if that person be Marwan. Even though they're my enemy, I don't want them to wait. Imagine the akhlaq of your Imam. He says, he came out. Marwan was looking down. The Imam says, what do you want? He says, look, my family have been here, my wife, my kids, we've been on the road, we have had nowhere to stay. He says, so what, you want a house? He says, yes. The Imam says, I have 2 houses. One was recently demolished. By who? By Marwan himself. He says, one was recently demolished. I have now refurbished that. That is somewhere in Medina. And then there's this one. If you want that one, you can move in today. If you want this one, listen to what he says. Listen to the beautiful words of the Imam. He says, if you want this one, give me 2 hours, I will vacate it for you. His own house. To this individual, who is an accursed individual. He says, if you want this, I'll vacate it for you. He said, no, Ya Imam, whatever you think is best for me. The Imam says, I think it's best that you go to the other one. For 2 reasons. Number 1, that other house has recently been refurbished, so you can easily move in. Number 2, is that it's on the outskirts of Medina. And so you won't have to be in central Medina, see people, they'll abuse you. It will be good for your family if you're on the outskirts, so they won't see you being humiliated in front. He says, okay, Ya Imam. The Imam says, I have 2 conditions. If an enemy of mine comes to me and says, I want your help, what do I say? I may help them, then I'll have 2 conditions. For example, I want 20,000 pounds, I want your women to cook me good food every day, etc. You do so much humiliation. The Imam's 2 conditions are not of money. Listen to the beautiful conditions. He says the first condition is that how long are you here for? He says 1 year. The first condition is, as long as you are in my house, you never pay rent. Never. The second condition is that every single morning a servant of mine will come to your house and he will say, what do you need for the day? And he will buy your goods and bring them to you so that you don't have to leave the house and be humiliated by the public. He said, no, Ya Imam. He said, Jad, this is too much. Listen to the reply of the Imam. He says, it's not because of you. Whenever there is a guest of Zainul Abidin takes care of every single expense of that person. Marwan ibn Hakam, that individual who was part of Karbala, who was part of the tragedy, the Imam acts with him in such a great way. Now let me say one line. I want everyone to remember this line. That our A'imma deal with their enemies in a better way than we deal with our friends and family. They deal better with their enemies than we deal with our friends and family. Imagine, look at the way that the Imam deals. In fact, in Medina, in his life in Medina, it is said, the Imam, the holy Imam Salamullah alayhi, he took care of 100 families. He had a poor cousin. This poor cousin, it is said, the Imam would go to him, feed him with a veil on his head. So he didn't know who it was. He would feed. That poor cousin would say, do you know my cousin, Zainul Abidin Ali bin Hussein? He's such a bad person. I am here struggling for food. He's sitting there with his 2 houses. May Allah's punishment be on Ali bin Hussein. The Imam is right in front of him, giving him food. He's not showing him who I am. Despite these attacks, despite his cousin cursing him, it is said the Imam would still go every single day. When the Imam then passes away, then this individual realizes that that was in fact my cousin. He cried at the grave of the Imam. In Medina, even though people attack the Imam, you can look, I don't have time, look in the narrations of Az-Zuhri, for example, the narrations of people that attack the Imam would pay their debts. Akhlaq in the eyes of Imam al-Sajjad is so important. If we even understand 10% of the akhlaq, our whole lives will change. This was the Imam's life in Medina, where most of his life has been spent other than Karbala. Then we find one of the most important discussions with regards to the Imam's life. There's a lot of different events I'm missing out. You can read about them. I'm sure you will. I've mentioned the book of Ayatollah Baqir Sharif Qarashi. You can find it online. All of them. One of the most important parts that come in now is, of course, the discussion of Sahifa Sajjadiyah. Before we start that, however, recite Allah Salawat. About 2 years ago, I mentioned the story of how Sahifa Sajjadiyah was compiled with the help of the Imam. Some of you were in that majlis, I don't know, I've always said that speakers remember what they say, listeners don't remember. So I can say something I said maybe last year, no one will remember. 2 years ago I mentioned this, that the way in which the copies of Sahifa Sajjadiyah we have today have been actually chosen, the narrations, the line of narrations of ahadith have been chosen by our Imam, our 12th Imam, Salamullah alayhi. Because Allama Majlisi, Muhammad Baqir Majlisi, who is the compiler of Bihar al-Anwar and other books, Ainul Hayat, etc., his father, Muhammad Taqi Majlisi, Mullah Muhammad Taqi Majlisi, it is said that, of course, he was a scholar, he was a pious man, that one day he was in a drowsy state. In other words, you know, you're in that state halfway between sleeping and being awake. Many of you are in that state now. Salawat. Allah. You laughed because it's true, I think. So many were he was in this half state of sleep and being awake. So As he was in this state, he says, I saw my Imam, and I saw a vision that I was in the Atiq mosque in Isfahan. In front of me was my Imam. I was so emotionally touched that my Imam was here, I knew. Yesterday we mentioned Ali al-Baghdadi, Haj Ali. He didn't know that the Imam was there. Mullah Taqi Majlisi, rahmatullah alayhi, knows that his Imam is there. So he says, I asked many questions to my Imam. And then I said, Ya Imam, give me the name of a book which I can read, contemplate, and implement into my own life. The Imam says, Sahifa, Sahifa. That's all he says, Sahifa. And he says, you can get this Sahifa from Taj, Muhammad Taj. Taj means crown. He says, I woke up out of this state. I realized I have to find who this Taj is. In the town, there was a scholar known as Maulana Muhammad Taj. I went to him. He was sitting in a circle with other people. I told him my whole dream. He said, you had a very good dream. But Maulana Taj, he interpreted the dream to mean that this means, oh, Mullah Taqi Majlisi, that you will have a very great state. It doesn't mean there's an actual book. Mullah Taqi said, no, I think there is an actual book. And in fact, Mullah Taqi says, I saw that Maulana Taj had a book with him. He was holding a book, some type of Sahifa. Sahifa means like a type of book. He says, then I was walking, I went near this melon market. When I saw on my right or my left, there was a man known as Al-Hasan. Agha Hassan, we called him. He was also known as Taj. He came up to me, I said salam to him. He replied, he came up to me, he says, Ya Mullah, I have many old books in my library. And I want to give them away. I don't use them. I want to give them away, but I don't know who to give them to. Because if I give them to certain students, they'll throw it away. They won't read it. They won't implement it. I want to give some to you. So come to my library. So I came. Agha Hassan Taj says, whatever you want to take, you can take. So I was in his library. I saw one book that said Sahifa. It looked like the Sahifa of the Imam in the dream. I took that. Then I went back to the other scholar, Maulana Muhammad Taj. I took his Sahifa. We put it together and formed was the Sahifa Sajjadiyah, the lines of narration we have today. The people ask, why is it that the lines of narration we have, the sanad, the chain of narrators is weak for the copy we use? There are other chains which are stronger. I'm not saying Sahifa Sajjadiyah is weak, no. But there are some chains that we use in some of our copies. For example, in Iran, there's a book of Sahifa Sajjadiyah which uses the weak chains of this Mullah Majlisi. He says, I use this line because it was chosen by the Imam. This is Sahifa Sajjadiyah. Now, there are so many things we can speak about Sahifa Sajjadiyah. I'm sure all of you have it at home. If you don't, I'm sure you can find it on the internet. There's no excuse for us. We can find it on the internet. There's one observation of mine. Whichever supplication we look at in Sahifa Sajjadiyah, it has one thing in common. That found within it is salawat. That the Imam, in every single supplication, he mentions salawat between the dua. For example, he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alihi warham. Or Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alihi wahshurna. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alihi waghfir. In other words, oh Allah, send your blessings to Muhammad wa alihi, and forgive us. And allow us to be with the abrar, the righteous people. In other words, the Imam has ensured that in every single dua, salawat is mentioned. Why? Because the Imam is trying to tell us an effective dua is a dua which has salawat. A dua which has the blessings of Muhammad and Aale Muhammad. And you find that some scholars give this beautiful example. I'll give it to you before we mention about salawat and dua, and then we go to the ikhtitam, because I don't want to take too much of your time. There was one scholar that mentioned that when someone is ill or unwell, what do we do? When someone is unwell, what they do is they take him to the hospital. Now, for example, the person is so unwell that they have to give him blood. So the doctor comes, he says we have to give a blood transfusion. They do the blood transfusion. Then the doctor, he comes to the family and he says, we've given the blood, now we want you to do dua to Allah. So what's the two stages? When someone is unwell, first you give blood, then you do dua. He said the same thing. Islam had a disease. The disease of Yazid and Bani Umayyah. Imam Hussein gave his blood, Sayyid al-Sajjad gave the dua. Now Sayyid al-Sajjad allowed Islam to continue through his supplications. Each and every one of those supplications has salawat. And I know many individuals believe in salawat and use salawat whenever they have problems. Because you should. Because there is no better supplication than salawat. If you are sitting here, for example, what's better thing while you're listening to do one tasbih of salawat? What better? Because you'll see not only will your bad breath go away, your face will be lightened with nur, enlightened. not only that any of your hajat can be made qabul and accepted with the salawat. For example, I'll give you a last example before we finish, that there was one man seen. This is mentioned in one of the books of Ayatollah Dastaghaib, one of his tafsirs. I've mentioned his books before. Again, I urge everyone to read his books. They are very good for all ages, young and old. That there was a man. He was doing Hajj. He was in Makkah. He was doing Tawaf. He was doing Sa'i. He was in Arafah. Now, as we know, there are certain du'as for certain places. For example, I'm doing Tawaf, Sa'iluka, Faqiruka. I'm here, I'm the questioner, I'm your faqir, I'm here, I'm asking you. There are different du'as. When you're in Sa'i, you say this, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, etc. You've all done Hajj or Umrah. If you haven't prayed, inshallah, today, that Allah grant you the opportunity to visit Makkah and Medina, inshallah. He says, we saw this person in Tawaf. He wasn't doing any of the other supplications. He was only doing salawat. In Sa'i, he wasn't doing any of the supplications. He was only doing salawat. In Arafah, he wasn't doing any supplication other than salawat. We went up to him. Brother, why is it that you're not doing the special supplications that have been mentioned? He said, there's a story behind this, of my father. He said that in this very journey of Hajj, I was with my father, I was taking him. During the journey, however, my father became very unwell. I realized he was in the state of ihtidar and sakarat. In other words, the soul was coming out of his body. I was holding him in my hands. I saw his whole face change. Because as we know, during the last stages of your life, some people have beautiful, blessed faces of contentment. There have been stories of the ulama when they are visiting and speaking to the imams. People have seen, we don't have time to mention, people have seen that there's someone speaking to, the person is speaking to someone, they can't see who it is. Many of the Imam alayhi salam come and speak to them during their last hours. Some people, however, their last hours are very dangerous. Their faces change. Their tongues swell up. For example, when they are told, read kalima, they can't. He says, my father, I was holding him, his face turned very black. He was in such a state of fear and chaos and panic. And he was saying, the fire is too hot, the fire is too hot, the fire is too hot. I realized he's not in a good state. I was so scared. I don't want my father to be burning in the hellfires. I want my father to be in a good place in the akhirah. I was so worried. I prayed, Ya Allah, please help my father. The fire is burning me. After a while, suddenly I saw the blackness of his face was removed. He was completely fine. He was content. He passed away with such contentment. I beseeched the Ahlul Bayt to Allah through the Ahlul Bayt to allow me to find out what happened in the last stages of his life that completely changed his state, that allowed him to be an individual who was in a good state in the akhirah. His father comes in his dream. He says, oh son, I was in such a bad state. The fire of hell, Malikul Maut, you find narrations, you can read it yourself, very scary narrations of the way in which Malikul Maut can come to you. He says, I was in such a bad state, I was scared. Then I could hear the last prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, saying, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He was calling out that, oh individual, now it is time for you to get the thawab for sending salawat on me during your lifetime. As he said that, I saw my whole affairs changed. Even though I got the adhab for what I did was bad, my whole state of affairs in the akhirah changed. Why? Because of the salawat that I used to recite. Sahifa sajjadi, you find in every single maqamat, salawat is mentioned. If we were to understand this salawat, we mention it a lot. Just in majlises we mention a lot. If you were to understand salawat truly, you would have to say it once, and every single one of your hajat would be qabul. This is the power, and this is the power of the dua. Dua we have today is through who? Imam al-Sajjad. His life is very interesting. His akhlaq, as we've mentioned. The way in which he deals with his enemies, we've mentioned. However, as I mentioned at the beginning, Adamu Aale Muhammad is one of his titles. One of his other titles is Nuh Aale Muhammad. Why? Nabi Nuh, his name was not Nuh. His name is said to be Abdul Ghafir. There are different derivatives in the books. Nuh refers to that person who laments from Noha. He lamented so much, he cried so much because of what happened to him that he was named Nuh. Imam al-Sajjad is also known Nuh Aale Muhammad. Why? Because he spent his life crying. He spent his life in lamentation. In fact, people say, ulama mention these ahadith. These are not from my pocket. That when the Imam was on the rooftop, people would pass by, it would look like it was raining. Because so many tears flowed from the eyes of the Imam. Not just that, it is said that the Imam, these are true narrations, that he would cry what? Tears of what? Tears of blood. Tears of blood for what happened. And the main masa'ib of Imam al-Sajjad is in the fact of, number one, what he saw, but number two, the fact that he was unable to do anything about it. Because as I mentioned in one of the days, if there is a brother who sees his sisters being slapped, who sees his sisters, the women of his family, their hijab being taken, and he cannot do anything about it because he's unwell, because his hands are unchanged, what will happen to that brother? What will happen to that man? That he says, I cry because of that. And our masahib today, because Ashra'i Zainabiyya is all about that one great woman, Sayyidah Zainab. And you find that with regards to Sayyidah Zainab's masa'ib, we want to mention and mix in Imam Sajjad's masa'ib, because Imam Sajjad's masa'ib is in the fact that he saw these masa'ib and he could not do anything about it. He saw what was happening, he could not do anything about it. They say the first masa'ib we want to mention is during Sham Ghariba. The second is on the way to Kufa and Sham. Because as we know, before Karbala, Zainab was a woman who looked completely different. After Karbala, her whole appearance changed. We'll mention that hadith in the future. Her whole appearance changed. They say Hazrat Mukhtar, tomorrow our majlis is on Hazrat Mukhtar and his revolution, how he got out of the prison, the whole story of Al-Mukhtar, rahmatullah alayh, salamullahi alayh. But today, they say Mukhtar, he asked Khuli. He said, what did you do on the night of Ashura, on Sham Ghariba? Laylatul Wahsha, what did you do? Listen to what he says. He says, I went towards the tents. As I went towards the tents, as I went towards the tents, I saw the other members of the army had already looted the women. The other members of the army had already looted the women and the children. However, I saw that there was one girl. There was this one small girl. They had not looted her, for on her ears were earrings. I am sure, he says, I'm sure they did not loot her because she was a small girl. However, I wanted to loot her. I wanted to take those earrings. I came up to her. I said, give me those earrings. She said, no, I cannot give you these earrings of mine, for they were given to me by my father on the day of Eid. Now that my father is not here, I need to remember my father. I need to remember my father through these earrings. He holds on to the earrings. They say he pulls these earrings. He pulls the earrings. The ears of Sakina rip. Out comes flowing the blood from her ears. What must she have said? She must have said, Ya Abba, Ya Sahuna, Ya Abbas, Aina, where are you, Ya Abbas? Khuli said, then I went forward. I saw there was one woman, an old woman, she was there. She had her whole hijab on. I thought, why should I not take this woman's hijab? I went up to her. This woman is Sayyidah Zainab. This woman is the old Sayyidah Zainab. He said, I took her hijab, I tried and I pulled. However, she was holding her chadar. She was holding it so tight. She was holding her veil so tight. I tried to pull and pull and pull. Yet still I could not pull her chadar. I said, what am I going to do? I want to take the hijab of Zainab. Listen, he says, I had a whip in my hand. A whip was in my hand. I took out the whip. I whipped the face of Zainab. As I whipped the face of Zainab, her hands became loose. I pulled off the hijab. What must Zainab have said? My heart says she turns to Najaf and says, Baba, Baba, ya Father, where are you? The
The masayib of Zainab has not finished. For what is the masayib of Sajjad? The masayib of Sajjad is he sees his sister Zainab in this state, his auntie Zainab in this state, yet he cannot do anything. They say, as Sayyida Zainab, as she reaches Kufa and Sham, her hairs were not grey only. They say her hairs were red. Why were the hairs of Zainab red? They reply, her hairs were filled with blood. The hairs of Zainab are filled with blood. What blood? Where has this blood come from? Explain to us. The explanation comes through history. As they would travel from Kufa and Sham, the small children would be in the laps of their mothers as they were tied onto camels. As the camels would run very quickly, the small children would fall on the right. They would fall from the left onto the plains of Kufa and Sham. Zainab would cry out, stop the caravan! Stop the caravan for these small children. These small children have fallen. However, those accursed individuals, they would not stop the caravan. They would continue. Why? In the way that the body of Qasim was trampled, in the way that the body of Hussein was trampled, the body of these small children was trampled. Zainab realizes, when they fall off the camel, if I also make myself fall off the camel, then they will stop the caravan. For they wanted Zainab to reach Kufa and Sham. So when Zainab would see a small child, has fallen off, automatically she would fall off the camel. Her head would hit the ground, blood would gush. No, this is not the full masayib. For Imam Zaman mentions the full masayib. What is the masayib? He says, may the please and blessing be on the hands of Zainab. For when someone falls off the horse or off the camel, they have their hands to protect them. When someone falls off the horse or the camels, their hands protect them. But the hands of Zainab are in chains. How does she protect herself? As she falls from the camel, blood gushes on the head of Zainab. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا ينقلبون. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك رافع الدرجات، إنك ولي الحسنات، إنك سامع الأصوات. اللهم اجعلنا لنعمائك من الشاكرين والآلائك من الذاكرين. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين وشفاعة الزينب. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله وسلم. يا حسين يا حسين.